Hi, this is Kay Whitmore, and I certify this podcast is regulation length, correct size, and I'm definitely signing off on it.
As the unofficial voice of goaltenders worldwide, In Goal Radio, the podcast, is now officially compliant by way of the guru, Kay Whitmore, who also goes by the Senior Director of Hockey Operations with the National Hockey League. He is one of the most powerful men in hockey, especially when it comes to goaltending, and he will be our featured guest on episode 9 of In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports, thehockeyshop.com. I'm Darren Millard. This is access you simply will not find anywhere else, offering a conversation with the likes of Henrik Lundqvist in this episode, a listener question answered by the number one goaltender of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that is just part of episode 9, spending some significant time with Kay Whitmore, catching up with David Hutchison, and of course, sending Kevin Woodley out and about. Kevin?
Yeah, Darren, this is week 3 of the Hockey Shop Source for Sports as the title sponsor of the In Goal Radio podcast, and that means another week I get to head into the shop, little slice of goalie heaven, talk to Cam Matwiv. This week we're going to talk about the new CCM Jetspeed FT2 goalie skates with their XSG holder, which is, of course, the first CCM goalie skate that has no cowling. And Cam broke it down for us, all the new custom options, which may be just as exciting once you get to know about the new fit and the new build on the skate, as exciting as the fact it's got no cowling. So we'll go over those details with Cam. Of course, I'm lucky. I get to go to the Hockey Shop Source for Sports out here in Surrey in the lower mainland of Vancouver in person. They've been in my backyard, and there's a reason I go there for all my goalie needs, an entire floor dedicated to the position, a staff that all plays the position, some of the best skate sharpening in the lower mainland. People drive for hours to get Cecil and his crew to sharpen their skates. But not everybody can come here. Not everybody gets the opportunity to visit in person. And for those, I would recommend you head to the website, thehockeyshop.com, for all your goaltending needs. They've got the latest. They've got full reviews up on the CCM eFlex 4, on the Bauer 2X Pro line, and of course on what we're going to talk about today, the CCM FT2 goalie skates. They've already got on-ice testing, on-ice reviews on their website, and of course, whenever we have new product, that means sale on the old stuff. So make sure you check out thehockeyshop.com. If you can't visit in person, check them out for all your goaltending needs.
KW, thank you. David Hutchison also has needs. You have a lot of needs. Most of it involves ointment and making sure your body feels good, because you, David Hutchison, are one of 2 goaltenders that are over the age of 50 that we will hear from in episode 9. You and Kay.
50 is the new 40 or 50 is the new 20. Yeah, I feel much slower. I'm super looking forward to listening to Kay today and your chat with him. We read so much about the regulations. We talk so much about the changes to gear over the years. And now we actually get to hear from the guy behind the scenes. And for me, it's fascinating just because obviously this is somebody he's played the game, he loves the game, he cares about the future of the game. And so to hear the perspective that's behind all the changes that he's making, that he's not really just the Grinch who stole goaltending, he's out there trying to make the game better for everybody. It's going to be really fascinating to hear what he had to say.
And he still plays. And that was part of the conversation that I thought was important to get across.
In compliant gear, I understand as well.
One of the 2 goalies,
yeah,
in that skate, but and the fact that he really feels it's important. So
who's the higher skilled goaltender when you guys are facing each other, Darren?
Well, you know what? I don't like to brag, but I did win the last time that we played. But we didn't switch teams when we got to 5. We just kept on going, and I had the much better team.
Who did you have? Who are you playing with there? That's good.
Just a few different guys from around the NHL office. They're all young. They're all college guys or junior guys or pro guys, and it's a really good skate, way above my pay grade. Kay is really, really good, but I had the much better team.
And you've got and the non-compliant gear.
Oh yeah, I cheat in every aspect, and the guys even laugh about it. You know when you're skating with these guys that know all the rules, you just step on the ice and they're going, yeah, nice job with the toe. Nice job with your straps. I'm like, yeah, exactly what I do. I'm cheating. Well, and it goes down to personal preference, right? It varies from all the different manufacturers. The one constant, Hutch, is that there's that little KW on each piece of pads or gloves or chesty or pants that's worn in the NHL. That is your stamp of approval from Kay Whitmore. And we got the green light to chat with Kay about his time both playing goal in the National Hockey League, actually going back to his earliest days tending the crease, and now his current role as he patrols the position in the National Hockey League. I've never had the opportunity to talk to you about certain things. One is, who is your hero when you were growing up?
Goalie wise?
Yeah, who captured your attention from a goaltending standpoint?
That's a good question. I think hockey-wise, it was a young age with Bobby Orr, but not. I know where we're going with this question. That didn't lead me to wear number 4 like certain goalies do nowadays. They have idols like 19 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think you grew up in Northern Ontario, and I went to a lot of junior hockey games. The Sudbury Wolves were the local team, so you went and watched. I remember way back watching Jim Bedard play. I was really young at that point. Was probably one of 600 people at the games. There was nobody there. But then Don Beaupre came along, and Don Beaupre was someone I loved watching play. I loved his butterfly. I loved his gear. And it was just, I guess that was a guy I kind of followed when I was younger. And just because it was local and I got to see him live. It was just one of those things. And obviously he had a great career, had a great run in Washington, Minnesota, all these places. And it was, I think that was a guy that I looked up to. I think I was fortunate enough at the time living at home with my parents that they took me to enough games, but my aunt and uncle living in Kitchener, they had billeted some players. They billeted Brian Bellows. They had Wendell Young was a good friend there, Al McGinnis. So these guys, I think one night after a game in Sudbury, they came down and had some pizza at my mom's house, and you got to meet some of the best players in the NHL at the time. Scotty Stevens was there, Al McGinnis. These guys are all guys that you end up starting to play with once in a while against. But at a young age, you got to see and be around a little bit. But like I said, Don Beaupre was a guy. Wendell Young was a player. You watch him play in junior, you got to know them a little bit, and you idolize them a little bit, and you wanted to do what they were doing.
You're almost in the perfect job because it's hard to find a picture of you that doesn't have the good gear. Like you were always color coordinated.
I think it's funny because now if I ever get a set of gear, they want to do retro old brown and stuff. I'm like, no, I had enough of that stuff early on. But yeah, I think in the Hartford days, the green and blue and the white patterns, the mask, I couldn't ever settle on, you can see some of my old cards. I had a different blocker from catcher, and my pads changed from one card to the next. But there was the years where we went to camp and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to wear. And it wasn't about the money. It was just about getting that feel. But you never think of it at the time, but there was some pretty cool looking gear.
When you look back at some of those cards, the backup goalie towel is in a lot of them. And Mike McKenna pointed this out. Like, one of your cards was his favorite card because of the backup goalie towel. We're trying to bring it back a little bit.
I think I'm surprised that it went away because I thought that it was a great way to stay warm. Mm-hmm. It fit right underneath your jersey and kept you warm, and it looked good. And unfortunately, I think there's probably a large percentage of my hockey cards have me skating around with the backup towel on and my partner snowing up the crease getting ready to start the game.
You still play. Do you think that's an important part about your job? Because you still get out there and you're active in playing, so you get to experience the gear and the changes and the shots and the sticks and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, I think it does. I think I tried to stay current with it for a long time. I think I probably didn't play for 15 years after retiring, but the last 2 or 3, I thought, as you get further removed from playing, it's important to try to be able to talk the talk. You got to be able to wear the new skates, wear the new pads, loosen your pads, have them rotate, have a toe, don't have the old toe buckle on and that get bent and breaks all the time. You try to wear what today's guys are wearing and get a feel for what it's like. Obviously, you're not playing at that level and the speed that they face and the way the guys shoot, but it just gives me a better understanding of what they're going through in a sense based on the equipment. I always try to pride myself, and I'll say that to the guys when I talk to them now. It's important to stay current. I never wanted to be the guy that forgot what it was like to have played or where you came from. So, getting opinions of today's players that, I haven't played in 17 years. It's a long time ago. The game's changed a lot. So getting, honest opinions from today's guys. I value a lot of the guys that I talk to all the time, and being aware of the gear and, seeing how guys can shoot even at a lower level with the stick technology and all that stuff. I think it gives me a better understanding what I can talk to these guys about and, on a lower level anyway.
So did you have that aha moment with the new way people wear pads?
I'm almost there. I
Yeah.
still am prone to tightening them too tight. And guys are like, you got to loosen them. I'm like, man, they're going to fall off. So I'm kind of in between. I've almost got it perfectly now where I get them to rotate and the pad actually does the butterfly for me and not my hips and that like they used to. But I'm getting close. And it's funny, even though you haven't played a long time and we play once every couple of weeks at the office and that with those skates that you come to all the time, or a couple alumni games, it's still, how do you get that feeling of when your gear feels great, you feel great. And you don't play enough. It's easier when you're on the ice every day, but now, every couple of weeks, it's harder to get to that point. But I tell you what, I'm almost there.
Is the mask you wear, was your Flames mask that was from your last stop?
Yeah.
Was that the same exact mask that you wore the entire time, or did you have a few different ones?
Same manufacturer.
Okay.
I had a few different ones. Unfortunately, they weren't as.
Because John Garrett, he just painted over his mask all the time.
Well, no, that happened a couple times. I think I had one or two I had painted over. The teams weren't as generous, or I didn't ask as much in those days. You kind of took your mask with you, and then one time, I think I was in Boston or somewhere. It just was painted black. It was in Providence. Put a couple stickers on it. You paint over it. It's unfortunate you lose the artwork. Now they become such a a keepsake for guys that you want to keep it on your bar. You want to keep it in your office. But unfortunately, the Flames one I wear now is still a Greg Harrison. I still won't go on the ice without it. It fits me. Fits well. It's in great shape. Obviously, I was only in Calgary 1 year when I got it. It was my last year. So
you played one game for the Flames in that mask.
One loss for the Flames, yeah. I spent about a month on the bench when Verney had a bad groin, and I think Roman Turek had a couple injuries, so I got to spend a little time there. It was a great experience with those two guys, but we had one loss on my record for the Flames, 3-1 to Tampa Bay, I believe it was. Wow. Marty St. Louis scored. I think Jason Cullimore might have scored. I can't remember the other one, but it was a fun trip because I think the most noteworthy part about that was we'd had a big dust up a couple games before that against Anaheim, where almost all the guys on both teams would get thrown out. So I think Greg Gilbert was their coach at the time. He was suspended. So Al McNeil was coaching. He probably didn't know my name and stuff at the time. No, Al's a great guy. I'm just being funny. But it was funny because we had a bunch of guys suspended, and you're just out there playing, and you get the call that, hey, by the way, you're playing tonight. He's like, oh, okay, great. I haven't played in a while in this league, but it was nice to get one game in there.
Who's your first win against?
When you're a Whaler, there's only one team you really want to beat, and it was against the Bruins at home, 4-2.
Really?
Yeah, it was. The guys played great. Like I always remember the first game like yesterday because I think I was sitting in the dressing room between Dave Babich, John Andersen, and you got to think of the characters that were on my team.
It's a lot of facial hair.
A lot of facial hair. Just guys that. They weren't going to let you be too nervous. They were just keeping you light. Ronnie Francis is your captain. You go Randy Ladouceur's there, Joel Quenneville, Ray Ferraro, Samuelson. You think of all the guys that are still in hockey and either broadcasting or coaching. There was a lot of them in that room that day, and we went out and we beat the Bruins 4-2. I remember both goals like yesterday. I think Craig Janney banked one in from behind the net off the back of my knee, and that was the first one I'd ever given up in the league. And then I think the other one was a beautiful cross-corner dump. Bruce Crowder skated into a one-timer, hammered it off the far post. It was one of those ones where probably not stopping that ever. And it was good. It was a good start, and it was fun. It was obviously you playing at home against the Bruins, and you've been drafted fairly highly, so people have some high expectations, and to get that first one was great.
Are you relieved that this year is almost over in the sense that you've now? Are we through the adjustments? Do you think in equipment? in the tweaks and like the major changes? We've done the pads, we've done the pants, we've done upper body and chest. It seems like we're through it. Like this, and this might have been the biggest challenge for you was the chest and arm.
Yeah, I think by far. I think the pants took a little longer than we wanted. We had a couple mistakes along the way, manufacturing-wise, where some padding was omitted, so we had to put the brakes on. And obviously, implement mid-season wasn't ideal. There wasn't a lot of happy goalies when we did that, but it was what we had to do at the time. But the chest protector was something that I wouldn't have thought it was going to be this difficult, but there are a lot of parts to it. It is one of the pieces that goalies change the least, that they're most particular about, and it's obviously protects a lot of vital areas. And I think to make any mistakes with the protection in this area was going to, be catastrophic. So we took our time. We working with the Players Association. Matthew Snyder was very supportive, as were Rob Zepp and Dave Sinclair, who've worked hand in hand with me the whole way. And it's been a collaborative effort. But we wanted to make sure if we're going to do this right, we're going to get it right one time, not try to, roll it out and have problems. So we took an extra year, and we learned a lot of things the first time. You play on the manufacturer's experience and their knowledge to say, hey, can you do this? This is what my vision is. We want it to look less square. We want it to fit better, not as wide, contoured, slope here and this and that. But, you get these dumb looks like, how do you want it done? So you go back to the drawing board. I always have these buddies that engineers and architects, these people, some that work with the military, and they
joke. Smart buddies.
Yeah, I got smart buddies. I try to associate with smart people. It makes me feel a little smarter. But you're sitting at All-Star and they're like, I don't get it. What's so difficult about your chest protector project? Just spec it out and build it. Like this guy's working in the military and they're building things that save people's lives, and you're sitting there going, yeah, spec it out. All right. It's like, even Coley said that. It's like, we just tell these guys how to build it. But at first you're trying to be careful and say, I don't want to go too far out here and say how to build it. And if it doesn't work, I'm not an expert in designing equipment. I've worn it a lot, but I don't want to get ourselves in trouble here either. But once we learned, we went through this process of we see this 3D scanner thing I saw once where we were doing a project on shoulder pads. So the player had shoulder pads on and they did a scan. You could see where the body was in relation to the shoulder pad, and they were projecting way outside the body. And we're trying to determine what the proper size shoulder pad was, and if there's too much projection, will it cause, more or less concussions, and is it better for the hitter or the hittee, and all these different things. And I looked at that picture and I'm like, hey, why can't we do that with a goalie chest protector? Because, the hardest part is to sell people on when you're reducing something. It's like, well, it's easy to sell if I show that this piece of the shoulder is 18 inches outside the body. It's not protecting anything. And you can see, a 3D rendition, of the body underneath it. So that's where we started. And we took all the existing units that guys were wearing a couple years ago and put it through this process. And then we try to refine what we wanted our standard to be based on what was in existence, what we liked, what we didn't like. All of them were acting, doing a good job of protecting guys. It's kind of how we came to a standard. Now that's the new way of doing things. You put it on a mannequin. The mannequin's the same every time. You do the same scan by the same company, by the same people, and all of a sudden the companies adapt. And now they know when they build a new model, it has to go to this process instead of just coming in and Kay has the eyeball tests, and sometimes Kay's eyes aren't as good as they used to be. And you get into a unit where you're like, oh man, I wish I would have never approved that. But the rules were 7-inch wide floater here and 7-inch elbow. Everything else was kind of, well, it's close. But now I think we buckled down on the rule and put a lot more, a lot more teeth in the rule. And it's harder to get around, and it's easier to police and maintain and implement. And I think that's how we got here. But I think to your point, I think the early part of the year was rough. I think, getting it rolled out, getting it to the guys as early as they ask for, and I really want to. It never happens because we have little control over the production.
That's manufacturing.
Manufacturing is, even if it's a new year for pants, chest protectors, whatever, they still have the way they're going to do it. They're going to build their pads. They're going to build their gloves. They're going to you're going to fit this stuff in when they can. And they want to get the guys their stuff, but they don't really. It's not that big a priority to them. So it leaves you answering questions. Well, how come I didn't get mine until September 1st? But, we got some guys in them in August. We got some companies got their units out for some of the big camps, like the one in Kelowna and that, where there was some instant feedback, some of it not really good, but it helped, spur the process on. So any feedback when something new's coming out is good. So then we can address it if there's, underprotected or anything like that, or the guys were finding problems. And it just started to evolve, and we got, once camp started, got guys in them, and every company started to get their scent, and some earlier than others. But there's guys that were more proactive. I remember middle of August hearing from New York and said, "Hey, Hank might get hit in the tricep here. Can we add a pad?" Yep. Never heard from him again. Like this. So we try to address every goalie concern one-on-one, face. Just do it personally. And there was some conversations on FaceTime with guys that said, "Hey, my new one, I can't even take my mask off. What's going on with this thing?" So I think we worked through all that in August, September, October. Then the season
because
started.
their hands couldn't reach
Their mask. They thought it was too stiff. They actually wanted a smaller unit. So there were just guys that were because part of this thing when you make changes is some of the older guys have been in units since they were probably in midget or junior hockey, and they've stayed in it. Their comfort level was there, and it may have been the same size as I tried to create, but the company that they were wearing decided not to build that old model anymore, and they wanted everyone in the new one. So we had to find remedies for these situations, and fortunately we had 5 or 6 companies building units at the time, so the goalies had a lot of choice, and the union supported that. Hey, if you don't like this exactly, try something else. And I think the equipment managers that were very proactive with this as well ordered 4 or 5 different companies for their goalies and had them in the back room, and the guys would come in and play around, and they'd try it and go, "Hey, I really like this. I don't like this. How about this part on this part?" And then we got into some Frankensteining things where guys like the arms on this one, the shoulders on this.
Yeah, that freaked me out. I didn't see that one
that
coming.
Was I should have known it was going to come, because if you go and see player shoulder pads, you can see a certain kind of cap here, a certain vest here, different parts over here. So players, you find a comfort in that, and we had to find a way around it. But it went back to the same process. If you want to take one guy's shoulder floater with a different arm and someone else's chest, let's send it, put it on the mannequin, and make sure it meets the slope and width criteria. And if it does, then I'm okay with that.
So you had to test the whole unit together, not just approve arms and approve. So if manufacturer A's chest and arm was approved and manufacturer B's chest and arms were approved, and you put them together, like in some Frankenstein arms and chest, you still had to put that on the mannequin to make sure it fit.
I didn't want to go out on a limb and get back into the soup where we were before, where all of a sudden someone's doing it because they found a way to take the biggest parts of each one, it's my biggest fear is always, if one company is so much more popular than the others, it means there must be something to it. From a goalie split. That's my antenna going up. Or it could be just that they did a better job, but you got to kind of sift through all that and say, okay, unfortunately there was it was spread out. So I'm like, that's comforting, because maybe, the playing field's pretty level. Guys are migrating to where they feel they like. And if one guy likes it stiffer, one guy likes it softer, one guy likes this, but they're all within the same sizes, then we're accomplishing the goal we wanted. But I didn't want to take a chance if, company A's full unit was approved and you put something from company B on that A. I didn't want to take that chance. So we just went through the same process, and it was quick. It was like, yep, that floater works on that one. And, oh, by the way, those arms work on that one. So we have several of those. I know it wasn't an ideal situation, but I don't think the goalies were doing it in any other reason other than to try to find that comfort level that they had in prior seasons. And I think that was, I'm okay with that.
Was there a point during the year where you thought, we're through this? Where the talk, the chatter kind of quieted down?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think about when the chatter was at its, was at a fever pitch there for a while, whereas every day you picked up the paper and there was 6 or 7 guys, the similar guys, and a lot of guys that I'd already talked to. And, I think some of them were legit. Some guys were wearing units where we changed the geometry of the arm, but we didn't ask them to change the protection level, and some foams were inadequate, and so we had to work through those really quickly. And then there were others where guys just weren't playing well. There were some guys that didn't like their statistics, and I'm sure if I let in 5 or 6 and you interviewed me after the game about my equipment, I'm probably not going to be overly happy to discuss it. And I think there's a lot of those. I took a lot of the quotes that I read they were out of context a little bit, because I had previously talked to the guys and I followed up with them after, and the conversation after wasn't exactly what was said in some of the articles and stuff like that. So I think the guys were good. I just tried to get out in front of it, and we try to be transparent through this whole process. So if someone had a concern and they thought we did something wrong or they were unhappy, hey, here's my number. Call me any time of day, and let's work through this. And if it's legit, we'll fix it. If not, then, because we've got a lot of other guys that are playing well, and not saying a damn thing, right? There was a lot of quiet, nobody but it's not a sexy story to go ask a guy in Detroit or in wherever he's playing, hey, you love your chest protector? Well, yeah, nobody's going to say that. It's just, it's
Squeaky wheel.
Squeaky wheel, and you're all in the same kind of, you're all goalies, and why do that? Why step outside the box when you don't have to? But the silence also made me feel good that there's a lot of guys out there that are playing really well in various companies' units, and we're going to get through this. And even talking to the Players Association, Matthew said, "Hey, keep dealing with it. You're doing a good job. Keep dealing with the guys one-on-one. This sooner or later this will go away." And I don't know. We got through November or so, and then it just becomes the new normal. And then companies have taken these ideas or the concerns that the goalies had and implemented them into Generation 2 models or Gen 3 models, and now they've got exactly what they want. And then, so when you start to see repeat orders coming through, it's a good feeling. The guys start to, they've settled in, and they just continue to play.
Some bruising, I'm sure, but nobody got hurt. That might be maybe the biggest surprise to me is you got through it without any injuries. Surprise might be the wrong word, but relief or whatever you want to use. But there wasn't any of that. There were some guys complaining about hitting some soft spots.
Yeah, no, I think to be completely honest with you, Darren, I think that was a concern every night. I think when you do something like this, a serious injury or an injury period could derail the whole project, and we go back to say, hey, I think there were some guys thought, with some of the bruising comments and that, there's just going to be an arbitrary, hey, this is it, we're backing off, put your old units on. But it was like, no, we're not changing. I've got a lot of pictures. I've seen some bruises, but the conversation.
Guys are sending in bruises?
There was through the equipment, man. Yeah, there were guys. It's like one guy was like, well, I thought I was supposed to send these in. It's like, well, who told you that? Like, it was just like, and the funny part about the one bruise I got was it wasn't even an area that we changed. Like the chest itself, the vest was. The ribs and the blocking area, the blocks on the chest protector wasn't something we changed. So I was like, why did I get this picture of a guy's bruised ribs? It doesn't make any sense. But I think, that was, it just was part of the whole thing. But when you have conversations with some guys, there's still a lot of guys who are like, hey, it's occupational hazard. You're going to get bruised. You're going to get stingers. You're going to get hit and all these things. It just, the topic of...
Because that's your era, right?
Right.
It hurt. It hurt a little bit.
Yeah, you that era when you went from the two-piece, the arm and the chest were separate.
Yeah,
there was a lot of bruising under the armpit and all those areas, and the companies have done a great job of adapting. Like
the armpit,
when you were a young kid and you got your first John Brown, you didn't get bruised anymore. You were like, oh, I might have a chance of making it, right? And I think even though you built the best stuff nowadays, there's still going to be some shots. You watch every night and you go, wow, what a shot. The guys are shooting so hard. They're coming right up to the white tees and they're banging one off the guy's shoulder. But like you said, we tracked the injury data, the contusions and bruises, and there was no spike in that through All-Star. There was no spike through the March meetings. There was no spike earlier in the season when everyone was talking about it. And I think anyone that needed a little bit more got what they needed without altering the shape. Then there were guys that were taking a padding out because they felt like they couldn't move. So that's the part that it's hard to explain to people, is that I don't know if it's just comfort level or pain threshold or what, but there were guys wanted to take the floaters off their chest protector, or they wanted to take the thickness.
Are they allowed
out of
to do that?
Yeah.
Really?
As long as, like I've never been one that would stand in their way of removing things, as long as I felt it didn't put them in harm's way. But I think some of we had this discussion in Nashville at All-Star when we were really getting into this project, was like, is a floater really necessary over your shoulder? Because the vest blocks and all that stuff are so thick that you could probably survive without them, but it's become part of the unit. But, we had a guy that tried without it, felt like he moved better. So, as long as he's not getting hurt, and it's his choice, right? So it's not, believe me, it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. So they play right now without a floater?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's an interesting look, but it sure makes the slope of the shoulders and the width of the unit look great. So.
So are you through it now? This whole multi-year, multi-equipment transition?
Well, I think the big part was the size specific, or the fitting the guys properly with the chest and the pant. That was one that was kind of tied together from the get-go. I think we're through that now. I think we've resized the pants. We have fit 1, 2, 3, 4, or small, medium, large, extra large. Yeah. We have the same in the chest. We have units now that are new that are coming in, and they get scanned and they're off by 3/4 of an inch on each side. We're down to jaywalking now. So I think we've got it down where this part is great, but
between pads, pants, and
Yeah.
upper body, this is how goalies are going to look for a few years.
this is probably, I think obviously the minute you stop, somebody finds something else, because I think goalie coaches are incredible. I think manufacturers find different ways to improve their products, but I think we've set this the way these are going to be, but you got to keep monitoring. When we did the pad length, pads sat on top of the skate. The toe strap was fairly a decent length. There were boot straps underneath your skate or across the back. Then we have the evolution of the loop at the back of the skate. The boot strap, Kerry takes it off, so everybody takes it off.
Yeah.
Then the toe lace gets a little longer, like Kondo had in Montreal. So now the pad drifts a little bit more up the leg, so you have to be concerned with, hey, is this pad going back to where we took the 2 inches off before? And because there's no directions on how to wear this stuff. When you make a rule, the understanding is the pad sits on the laces of your skate. Well, you look at a lot of them now; they're touching on the toe. The boot angle now takes the pad and goes straight up the leg, which we accounted for with the measuring system we have now, because boot breaks. A boot break at 90 sits nicely on your foot, which would have been a nice rule. We should just put a 90-degree boot break in. But that kind of limited, some of the design ideas. And would probably put more rebounds back in the slot, not in the corner, because that's kind of one of the big ideas behind the boot break being so steep. But it also ran, it took a 38-inch pad when you measured it the old way and ran it way up the leg. So we had to, if you wanted a steep boot break, you had to cut your pads down. But now if the pads aren't worn tight and they're moving, is this something we have to look at again? Now you get the calf strap at the back of the calf. Some guys use it to keep the pad higher off the leg, but a kid the other day told me he needs it because he finds the pad travels too much and he's falling off his knee lifts. So 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But I think the thigh rise thing is always something we'll be kicking around. Not to say we want to go back, when you see the old pictures of Kelly Rudy or what it used to be like, but I think the argument would be between the current measuring system that takes 2 leg measurements, the lower and the upper, and says, is this really necessary? Like, at what point is your knee covered and your pad is starting to go so far up your leg that it's a pant issue? Mm-hmm. Right? So, are we giving the taller guy with the upper, most guys that are 6'6" and up have a way bigger shin than you and I. If you're at 20 and I'm at 20, some guys like that, they're 24-inch shin, 23.5-inch shin. You're looking at a 4-inch longer pad already if you just base it off shin size. And then if your upper thigh is big as well, you're getting another advantage. So sometimes the amount of pad above your knee blocks could be as much as 14 inches, right? So the argument from some guys, active players today, like, should we cap the thigh rise? So everyone's thigh rise is the same. And that was a discussion back with Glenn Healy when he was at the Union, when we created this whole system about the proportionality thing. So I think that's something that will always, be on the back burner. And would it help if the guys are protected and everyone, the playing field's level, everyone has the same amount of pad above the leg? Does this, do you see more goalies maybe that 5'9", 5'10"? Does everyone want to draft a 6'7" goalie now because I'm not saying it's because of the equipment, but it's also because they're damn athletic and they're incredible at that size. But would this play into, making the under 6 foot goalie come back again? But these are conversations that I have with myself every day, because I look at these things and I know that I've cut mine way down because I can't move in them. But guys find a way to do it. But I think this is something that, I've talked to goalies before where some agree with it, some disagree with it. And, if it ever got, it might be a discussion point at some point at the competition committee level.
Do you inspect every piece of equipment that is worn?
Yeah.
So it's not just like a random, they submit it and you look at 3 or 4. I just from a pure time sense, your office just must be full of gear nonstop.
Yeah, I think, I forget whose idea this was in the first place. The clearinghouse process seemed like a great idea up front. It might have been Kinger's as he was handing the goalie torch off to me.
Yeah.
But guys were getting 2-3 pair of pads a year, and it was manageable. And then, I think last year we had a guy with 13 pair of pads.
13.
I think it's, as soon as it's soft, it gets in your head. Soft means weak.
Yeah.
So every 2.5 weeks, I need a new pair of pads. right away, and get a guy with 36 catch gloves already, into March here. So the amount of equipment, we're approaching probably 5,000 pieces of equipment a year, because you're talking not just the 60-some NHL goalies, but you got their counterparts in their system in the American League, and you've got the guys in the coast, and sometimes even get the Southern Professional, all these different leagues. Usually sometime at some point the gear starts coming through, and it's good because some nights you've heard all these situations where you got an emergency goaltender. Or
do they have to wear approved gear?
Yeah.
The emergency
the
backup
emergency
guys?
backups don't. We've had a hard enough time getting emergency backups. Like, to throw that another wrinkle in there would be a big problem. But
what if you're an emergency call up, like from Major Junior?
If you're an emergency call up, yes. So
Yeah.
you take, for instance, in Vancouver when DiPietro came
Yeah.
up, they had a pair of pro gear for him that was made in camp. So, there's been situations like that. I remember one year, I think a kid got called up in Pittsburgh. They were in Vancouver, and his two options that day were to wear a pair of Fleury's pads or a pair of Brent Johnson's pads.
You're right about that.
And he went in and forget which pair, but he let
Flowers.
the first shot in, and then he stopped the next 19. He was third star of the game. But that was the rules. Like, it's at the end of the year, all I have to answer to the teams is, like, we missed the playoffs by 1 point, and that point was by a goalie that wore an illegal pair of pads. I don't want that.
No.
So I think that's why it's a lot more work to clear things through the office. But to know, I think one of the first years I was on the job, and it involved Adam Burkholz, who works for Vaughan now, is that Atlanta had like 6 or 7 goalies hurt. And the 7th goalie was coming up to play, and we needed to make sure that his equipment was correct and accurate. And lo and behold, I think they were playing the Leafs. The Leafs were in Atlanta, and of course my phone's ringing off the hook. Hey, so-and-so's got these red pads on, and it's like, hey, relax. We had a pair to them by game time. It was like there was a lot more juggling back then, but now if we have everybody in the right size pads, playing wherever they are, and sure, it takes me a few more hours a month or a week to get through that stuff. It's comforting to know when I hear, Samuel Montembeault is playing for Florida tonight. It's like, great, I've seen all his gear. It's all been signed off on. Does it take a long time? Absolutely. But
is it easier like physically how to measure the gear? Have you got that down? You've got the equipment. You're still using tape measure? Are you using a model? Or
I've got a tape measure. I've got a gauge that I put the pads on to check the height. I've got a mannequin for the chest protectors to make sure, like, I don't send everyone for a scan, but if there's any doubt in my mind, and the companies know that random scans will be done. I've done a couple randoms where I've found, the shoulder caps were an inch too wide on a couple here and there. I'd send them back. So my quality control is better than it's ever been. But I guess you get it down to a science. You just get the tape measure out, you open the boxes, you start ripping through it, and before you know, 4 hours is gone.
Yeah.
But it's never going away. So if you just to have it sit there, and you also understand what the goalies are going through, they need their gear as fast as you can. So if you try to get it in and out the same day, which doesn't always happen, but the next day or so, it's a good feeling when that room's empty and there's about 60 boxes going out. Saying that, the challenge from middle of August to the middle of late September, that's never happening. It's just every day, and to try to do that out of the 11th floor of an office building, the courier guys aren't crazy about it, especially parking down on Bay Street after some of the new parking regulations. And there's a lot of challenges to the system, but you think about, and the cost it adds to the teams to get this gear to them approved, but I think it gives you, that's the first step in policing this whole thing. And then when you randomly check them when you're at a game or something like that, chances are they're probably in another set from the, they change their stuff so much, but at least you have that comfort level that you've already seen it. Because to go back to where it was when we didn't do this, you'd be on the road every day. Yeah. You just have to check, and then there's just too much unknown. And
because you used to stop by the teams.
You used to go to camp and see all the guys, and you'd see all the teams 2 or 3 times a year, and you'd be constantly, like, I think last year I did one where I was 31 teams and 30 teams in 31 days or something. If you look at the schedule, it's doable, but it's exhausting. And then you come back to an office that's got 300 boxes in it. So
but you don't have, like, there's not an assistant. You don't have an assistant.
Not yet. I think there's been talk about that, but sometimes.
Do I apply? Like, do I apply to Gary or Kinger or? You
have to apply to Colin, I guess.
Colin,
I think there's talk about, can you hire like a former goalie to go out and do this inspections? Well, yeah, but there's a way to do it, and there's like, and do you hire someone random that's never done it, because maybe they'll do a better job because they'll be harsher, but there's things that you need to know. Like,
yeah,
when you go in a team's dressing room and the guy just lost because he got stuck behind the net, and he lost 2-1 in New York, and you're in his dressing room and he's yelling in a foreign language, you got to understand how to give him a couple minutes, keep him in your sight, make sure he doesn't change his gear. but then he'll come and talk to you. Like this guy, after you're doing it for a while, you respect them a little bit. They respect you. It's like, that's the hardest part of the job. Yeah. It's like you wish every guy you were inspecting won 5-0. Because they're in a great mood and they all want to sit around and talk like Marty Biron. Like that's the best. Yeah. Marty Biron had the longest spot checks ever because he just loves to talk, right? And I enjoy.
So you still do the spot checks?
Yeah. I was in Chicago last week, and it's important. Like I'd never met Colin Delia to talk to him if he ever has questions. These guys to know that pick up the phone. Go in the equipment manager, grab Troy's phone, and you guys all call me together. Let's chat. And I think that's the best part is when they talk to you one-on-one, and you got the obviously 40 home games in Toronto. Try to get down there and talk to the goalies every time. And it goes a long way, especially when the young guys. It's not always just about scaring the crap out of them that you're checking their gear. It's just like, do you understand? Do you have a question why we do this or why you do that? And sometimes it's educational. And I don't know. I think I know when we talk to the guys at the Players Association, some of the goalies think that's just as important as doing it, is making sure that you're around.
Equipment manager's great. Darren Granger doing his 2000th game, LA Kings.
One of the best guys. He
was
of the
in
best
Vancouver
guys. When I was there.
Was he?
As an assistant to Patty O'Neill. Yep, I got to know him a long time
We were in the same
ago.
midget hockey team.
Really?
Yeah.
He's a button-down guy. He does a great job, and I joked with him. I sent him a text today. Hopefully, there's a lot more to go. He's not that old.
No, he's not.
2000's only. He's just tip of the iceberg for him.
But equipment managers must be like, oh, this is great because they could say no to people. Like, and you don't have to answer that. But that's what I was thinking was, people come to them for tweaks and stuff. They can say no. One thing you said before, I wish I hadn't approved that or something, like a piece of equipment. Do you have regret, like every now and then, regret something where you see and you go, I should take another look at that? Or
yeah, I think the one I was referring to was a chest protector. That I didn't like the way the corners stuck out and made goalies look square. And then every time I got a call about it, it was like, had that chance.
Yeah,
I didn't. That was my gut on that was, but I try to also be, like I said, where did it fail? Like it's all like it looks like I don't like it, but it's 7 inches here, 7 inches there. It met all the criteria. It's like I need more criteria. Yeah. It fit, and it's protecting guys, but it just looks different than these other guys. And then I hear it from some of the other goalies where they're saying the same thing too.
And they're watching everything,
and they're
right?
watching, yeah. So I think that's touch wood is the best. The part is the whole chest protector thing started sitting at a meeting at Kettler, the Capitals practice facility prior to the Sochi Olympics with the U.S. goalies. It was, Corey Schneider was there because he was part of the competition committee. I think Craig Andersen was there and Ryan Miller, but they had to leave. But Johnny Quick and and Jimmy Howard sat in with the meeting, and the big discussion centered around, if I'm 230 and that guy's 170, why do we look the same? So that was always what we were trying to accomplish, was to make guys look closer to what they look in real life. And I think we've accomplished that to a sense, other than the fact that these guys are way bigger than people think. Like you try to make Anders Nielsen look small. If you've ever met him and Robin Lehner off the ice, you'll know what I'm talking about. These guys are the probably biggest guys on their teams.
Like physically,
just muscular,
barrel-chested,
like
shoulders,
like Dave Babbage type guys.
Yeah.
Like those guys, like and Wayne Babbage and those kind of guys used to play. Like there's more of those guys that are goalies now, I think, than are forwards. Obviously, there's still some big strapping wingers and stuff out there, but you look at some of these goalies. Like Tampa was in the other day, and I've talked to Louis Domingue in his gear before, but I saw him out of his gear, and he's way, way bigger than I thought he was. Mm-hmm. I thought it was all gear. It's not gear. He's just a big. These guys are big. They almost 6'3", 200-pound guys. Every goalie. That's what the average is. So it's a task in its own right to try to make someone that big look smaller than they are. But I think that was the mission from the goalies themselves. And when the best goalies, some of them that were sitting at that table, was their idea and they stayed involved in the process the whole time. It helped. Help push things along, because that's what people would say. Well, what's different this time? Why are you going to get it right this time? Well, because Rob and Dave from the PA are with me every day. We've gone to these factories. We've been on every call together. We've seen every goalie together, and the best goalies in hockey continue to support it. And if we don't get this done quick, they're going to unsupport it, and they're going to go back to the wild, wild west and say, Christ, you couldn't do anything about it. We're just going to wear whatever we want to wear.
What's the tallest pair of pads you ever measured or ever saw before there was regulations that you remember hearing about?
I think the ones I hear about, and I was cleaning out the old drawers and desks, there's a lot of pictures of Snowy in there. Mm-hmm. There's some bigger pads, and I see Dave Dryden in some chest protectors and some memos and stuff like that, but I think they were right around 40. 40 with a steeper boot break, so it probably played like a 41, 42, but that's a massive pad.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Come a long way, eh?
Come a long way, but I think we were so far behind. I think we've turned the corner, and now, I think things it looks proportional. It looks proper. You can never quantify how many more pucks are going in, but when you do a project like this and you get it up and running, and then the NHL is having a resurgence in scoring, it makes you feel.
So goals being up is good for you, right?
Yeah, I think goals being up is great for me and Stephen Walkham. Because whenever goals drop to like 5.1, the goalie's equipment is massive and the referees are terrible.
Yeah.
So I think we're kind of kindred spirits in that sense. But, I can honestly say I think at the end of the night, if I go home and I work out the scores, like if we average 6, I'm pretty happy. I think whether I don't know.
But you still hate being scored on when you play.
I still absolutely hate scoring on, but I love watching like people, like you watch the Toronto Philly game.
Yeah.
There's a crazy amount of goal scoring. But I don't know if I'm crazy, but people seem to like scoring.
Yeah.
Heels used to say that when he was give the people as many reasons to stand up and cheer as you can. Yeah, there's going to be some nights, but you make, what did Bob make? How many saves the other night? 48 saves, shutout?
Yeah.
Well, I think he earned that. That's still pretty exciting too, right? There's going to be nights like that where it's not all about scoring, it's about scoring chances, and this is the debate all the time. Oh, you're nuts. But no, I think I think we never thought that one piece of this would increase scoring or whatever, but I think there was a competition committee meeting at the Park Plaza in New York where the list of ideas under the umbrella of what affects goal scoring. One was coaching, one was style of play, goaltender equipment, officiating. So then you have a tweak to the slashing standard. We do some work with equipment, and that was where Ed Snyder made, he was also part of the process where he gave a real passionate speech to everyone in that room. Matthew and I took it personally, was that, can you guys take one more crack at the shoulder pads and chest protector thing? And fortunately, he didn't get to see it this year come to fruition, but I think he was a big driver of, when it comes from the competition committee level, and, no one said one thing would make a difference, but, the sum of all the parts I think it's a great game right now. And obviously, probably most of the credit goes to the players because this talent pool is incredible. They're fast, they're talented, and they've been, probably scoring on this style of goalie since they were 10. So there hasn't been that overlap where the new goalies confuse the old shooters, and but I don't know. There's a lot of good things going on.
I love the Mr. Snyder comment, because no franchise has had more maligned goaltending issues than him, and he still put the overall product ahead of his own team, and he took his own team seriously. Before we let you go, do you think we're now at the stage where people are going to start trying to cheat again? Where our goalies are going to start tweaking it, because that's a sign that that everything's taken care of. When instead of stopping trying just to comply, they're trying to bend the rules. Or have we never left that area?
No, I think I think Coley always says, and he drives me crazy when he says it, is if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yeah.
You heard Ray say it on the broadcast, you're knocking the net off, or you're doing this or doing these things. I do think it's probably, as a goal, the old goalie in me looks at this objectively now and says there may have never been a more, but then is this the most difficult time it's ever been to play goal? Because it's wide open. The skill level is incredible. The game's so fast now, it's hard to shut it down. Obviously it was wide open in the 80s, mid-80s, late 80s too. So some of the old goalies would probably argue with me, the good ones that came out, and, when Grant and Byron came out about the goalie interference, when all the goalies were complaining. I think every era is hard to...
I did that interview.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
I think some of the, to compare eras is hard. But I think you may be on. I think if it gets harder and harder to stop the puck and scoring continues to rise, then inevitably guys are going to be looking for an edge, right? You're always looking for some sort of edge, whatever it's going to be. So what's the next thing? Where are the new thigh boards coming from, or where's the new something? What's it going to be? You're always trying to be on top of that and see where are we going from here. I'm sure other sports. I would imagine Formula One, NASCAR, when they have 14 guys overlooking each car before a race, inspecting them, I'm sure there's things that those mechanics find how to get, So
and NASCAR just put big penalties in.
Right. So they're always looking, because the sport's always evolving. I think we have to be cognizant that what is out there and what's coming next. The goalies work harder than anyone in the off season with their coaches. Who's going to find something next? What's the new pad now?
Yeah.
There's no straps left on the pads. They rotate better than they ever have. All these things. So
all of my stuff's illegal.
Right.
Guarantee all of it's illegal. Do you use all approved stuff? Would all your stuff be approved?
I figured I probably should set a good example.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not, and the skates that we've been out together, I'm fully on board. And if I can get better, like more illegal stuff, I will.
yeah,
But
that's good. They would welcome you with open arms in the KHL.
oh, the KHL, exactly.
Where scoring is very low, but no, yeah, I try to be as legal as possible.
Yeah.
Actually, part of it is because I think it sets a right example, but also it's just because I can't move. It's too much work wearing the other stuff. I really like a 32-inch, 10-inch pad.
You still do skate saves?
I
The odd
do.
time?
It's dangerous though.
It is. Yeah.
It's especially if you. That's why I didn't go to the new skate.
Really?
Yeah, I realized that it's a habit you can't break.
Yeah.
Like, like I think what Vasilevsky broke his foot.
Yeah.
Doing something similar that I would do 25 times a game.
Right.
And I think there's still nights where the puck's coming in a way that you probably shouldn't do it, but you do it. So I think I better keep a cowling on my skate for the rest of however many more alumni games I have in me.
Congratulations on getting through it. It's been a process. You've been under the fire of critics at times, goaltending and coaches and managers, and you've withstood it all. So I'm really happy for you that you got through this whole thing. It has been a process.
I hear about it at work almost every day. It's kind of calmed down now because I think there were people that didn't think this would get done.
Yeah.
But I know that I think the one thing I'm proud of, and when I got drafted by Emil Francis pretty high in 1985, was they were expecting probably more things as far as wins and championships
60 wins
in Hartford. But I think what I learned over my career was you have to be resilient as a player, and I didn't realize how much that would come in handy after the fact when you stop playing. Just everybody. It seems like some days nobody's on your side.
Like you got beat down pretty good.
You get
right?
beat down. This is a mess. There were meetings when I started this job where you were challenged every day, and they were tough. There were guys who were tough, and it just taken year after year, keep working and chipping away, being honest, showing integrity, and doing it, and then you're in the respect of the managers after a while, to the point now where you make a suggestion, they say, hey, we agree with that. But it's taken a long, like you said, it's been a process, and I'm sure it will continue to be a process. But I think it's one of those things that it's like you always look to the next save. Mm-hmm. That's one of those mentalities that I guess some things you learn in school that you don't ever get to do again, like calculus or some of these different things. But
Thank goodness.
I think looking to the next save, or we talk about like the other night with that goalie's mentality. Freddie makes that big save. It doesn't matter when that big save is. It doesn't always. It's not only a big save when you win 2-1.
Yeah.
It's still like Glenn Hanlon was great that way with me in Vancouver. It's like, hey, that save when it was 7-7 was great. It came back to help us win the game. But those are the things that I guess you learn along the way as a player, and you can apply them sometimes.
Now you can go on to other issues. I don't know what those are going to be, but
they're always goalie related issues.
A lot of videotape. Thanks, Kay.
Thanks, Darren. My pleasure. It was enjoyable.
All the stuff that we talked about with Kay, Hutch, there's one thing about him that stands out, and that's those initials on the equipment. And the first time that I wore gear that had those initials, I felt kind of special. I'm not going to wear them now because I'd rather cheat and take up more net. But you did feel like you were in an exclusive club with those initials on your equipment.
Yeah, for sure. I remember the first time I saw a set. It didn't really realize what I was looking at, and then it came to me, and now every time we see a game on TV and there's a close up of a goaltender, you can see that little KW often, top of a blocker, bottom of a pad, something like that, and yeah, you feel like you're part of a secret society or something because you understand what's going on there.
So what was the piece of equipment that you had?
Well, I'm not sure what the first one was, but an interesting story about that. We had CCM sent us a set of Roberto Luongo's pads and gloves, probably a pro return set or something that maybe he wasn't happy with the color. I can't remember. Shipped it out to us, and there was a bit of a rush to get something into the magazine for an issue that was coming out, and so it actually arrived Boxing Day. I think it was Boxing Day, and it was delivered by Purelator, and I got a notice that it was in the warehouse and that we could go pick it up. I guess they didn't want to deliver that day or something. And so I went down to the warehouse and said, listen, I think I've got a package in there if you guys wouldn't mind checking. And I guess it's probably close to the end of the day on a holiday. everybody would rather be at home. So somebody went into the back room, looked around, and came out and said, no, it's not here. And I was pretty certain from the tracking info I had that it was in the shop. So I said, this is kind of weird to say, but do you think you could just have one little more look, because it's gear from Roberto Luongo, who was sort of at the height of his fame with the Canucks at the time. And all of a sudden, everybody's ears sort of perked up, and they ran into the back and looked really hard and magically came out with the gear. So it had been there all along. And then, of course, I had to unbox it right then and there for them. And all the guys from the warehouse wanted to come out and get their picture taken with Luongo's gear. So that was a lot of fun. And so one of those pads and gloves is still sitting upstairs in my son's office, or my son's room.
Name dropping, Bobby Lou.
That's as close as I can come to name dropping. Nobody would ever do it for me.
Hey, what's your favorite piece of equipment, new equipment to get?
Yeah, interesting.
Because we heard a lot about Kay going through gear upon sets of gear for the same people, and so I imagine sometimes you get a little old.
Yeah, getting the pads is always fantastic, because I remember the first set I ever got as a kid that were really sort of pro level stuff, and so every time a new set of those comes in, it's really exciting, without a doubt. Just even though we've probably had a chance to see it somewhere else and have our hands on it somewhere else, to see that order you put in realized right in front of you, it's always really exciting. And so in terms of getting something new, it's definitely the pads. I think your favorite piece of gear, I'm going to guess if we ran a poll, maybe we should, it would be interesting to see what everybody would say, but I would guess that the majority would say the glove. It's sort of our bread and butter. It's what the windmills are made of. Love it, but at the same time, I don't say it's my favorite one to get out right away, because at the level I play, it takes a long time for a glove to get useful and usable. I'm not facing many shots that are all that impressive at my level in local beer league. So it's probably, honestly, a couple of years before I really settle into a glove and feel good about it. So I thought it was fascinating to hear Kay say that there's a guy in the NHL this year who's been through 36 gloves. I can't imagine it. I can't imagine something being so perfect that you want to use it right out of the box like that.
Oh, there's a sports psychologist making some money right now.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Well, there's so many people listening to this podcast who would think unpacking new gear every day, what a dream job. And Kay gets to do it, and so does Cam at the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports, and that's where we're going to send you for this week's gear segment, brought to you by thehockeyshop.com and the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports. Here, once again, is Kevin.
All right, we are back at the Hockey Shop with Cam Matwiv.
You said it right.
See, there's a first for everything. I told you I would get it eventually. And this week, we're going to talk about the new CCM Jetspeed FT2 goalie skate, which I think the first thing that jumps out for people is, and there's probably an element of finally, CCM has a cowlingless goalie skate. And it looks like it's going to be a good one with lots of options. Why don't you walk us through some of the features, Cam, of this new skate?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the fact that finally a cowlingless goal skate from CCM. What so far looks and has felt like a fantastic skate and a great addition to CCM's lineup. I mean, there's quite a few things to cover, but one of the biggest things that, a lot of guys have highlighted recently is the weight of the skate in particular. Before we even get into any tech and specs, we're talking about what is one of the lightest weight cowlingless goal skates that we have on the wall.
Yeah, and we'll play the audio in a minute, but he was a Canuck for about a week. He's in the AHL again. Marek Mazanek was the first goalie I saw wearing this holder, the XSG, CCM XSG holder. He had it on a pair of AS1 boots, and that was the thing he said too. He was actually coming from a true skate, and I was a little surprised that he said he switched over, but to him, the weight savings were significant.
Definitely a little foreshadowing with the AS1 there. We'll get to that in a second. But that said, again, weight aside, the skate continues on what CCM has done in the past with their full one-piece boot construction. their big highlight of that note is that there's zero energy transfer lost in that, especially between that. When as soon as you have an outsole of a skate, there's another connection piece of it. There you can have that extra assembly piece where A, something could go wrong with your skate, or B, again, you have that shift. Here, all energy is transferred down to the ice in your push.
What's the difference in terms of a feel and a fit for one-piece skate? Full disclosure, we've got a set on the way ourselves, went through the full 3D scan process that you'll get into to make it a custom fit. But in general, if you're just buying it off you at the hockey shop, Source for Sports here, off the rack and on the foot, how's that gonna feel different, that true one-piece construction that CCM has in the Jetspeed FT2 that they also had in the AS1 last year? How does that feel different? Is it more of a wrap around the foot than a multi-piece construction?
I think you hit it on the head right there with the word wrap. That wrap fit really provides that responsiveness inside the skate, that lack of shift when you go push. A lot of that is about sizing, which is what we're here for. But that said, you don't feel that skate kind of buckles, really the wrong term, but we're going to go with it anyway, of it buckling and moving. It's a consistent plant push.
So no give, basically what you're, and we've heard this with the True Line as well. This is what the goalie's like. What their foot does, the blade's responding immediately on the ice. There's, as you said, no lost energy transfer. So walk us through then Jetspeed FT2, some of the features with that XSG holder.
For sure. So overall with the holder, we got that removable steel, extremely easy. It's basically just turning it, which I believe you guys have a video of. Take it out, you can pop that new steel back in, super easy, which is also a carbon blade steel and also a 3mm steel, which is something completely different from CCM, who has always previously been 4mm.
And of course 3mm versus 4mm, that's basically a weight savings thing. So again, when we hear guys like Mazanik who are early into it say how much lighter it is, part of that is the 3mm steel. As far as the sort of that black steel or that carbon edge blade, at least our experience, and other brands too, because other brands have adopted this. For example, with the Bauer 2S Pro we've been trying, consensus is it's roughly cuts your sharpenings in half. It'll hold an edge roughly twice as long as standard steel. So nice to see CCM. They've had this before. Nice to see them bring it along with the FT2.
That echoes feedback that we've gotten here in the store as well. It's just that like this steel feels sharper even at a what was my regular cut in a regular stainless steel blade without the carbon. It's a fantastic addition, and I think it makes the skate just perform that much better.
Next features as we walk through the skate. And the other thing too, and CCM has talked about this a little bit with me on the side, the idea of having that dial on the heel to unlock the skate is, instead of you have to dial it a fair bit before it unlocks, the idea being the trigger function of a quick unlock blade has led to some malfunctioning in other products where you actually lose the blade while you're playing. And, we see the goalies panicking, and in Tuukka Rask's case, turning his blade into a shiv and then throwing it across the ice. I thought he was going to kill a referee that day. So the idea here being you're able to change the blades for goalies that we know goalies love to come here to the hockey shop, Source for Sports in Surrey, for sharpenings from Cecil and the crew. Sometimes they'll come as far as an hour away, so they'll buy multiple sets of blades, get them all sharpened at once, and then they can do the quick change. That way they've got multiple sets. They don't have to come back all the time, but they're always sharp. So again, the idea is it's an easy change, but not so easy it's going to happen to you on the ice.
Ideally, yeah, so you don't have a blade flying across.
Not that happens often with the other products. It's pretty rare. It just tends to be spectacular enough that everybody notices it.
And on national television.
Right.
That all aside, one of the other things that I really want to talk about is the asymmetric flex that this skate can take. Now, it seems like a big flashy tag word, but really it's about that forward flex while you're just standing inside the skate. It allows for great rotation of that skate now coming down to the ice and picking itself back up and out and setting you into a stance without having what I call almost that little bit of a stumble forward. You'll see some goalies that go C-cut and they catch and they almost kind of trip forward before they stand back up properly in their stance.
You've been watching me fall all over the place, evidently.
I must have been watching some game film from Kevin Woodley, I will say. But
that's not the skates. That's just called bad goaltending, folks. Just so you know. But the idea here is there is some forward flex there, and so you're not restricted too much in your movement.
Correct, but again, rewinding back to the blades, that can be a little bit attributed to the front of the blade. Now, I'm going to lack a terminology moment for this, and the best way I can kind of say it is just the way the blade is cut, so it tips up a little bit, allowing for a little bit more stability and also an additional place for your toe to push off of, just some extra steel, and I think you got a bit of that that Mazanek was talking about.
Yeah, Marek Mazanek talked about this actually, and it took me a while. You mentioned the terminology. It's tough because I didn't know what he was talking about. He talked about it being angled, and I wasn't sure. You can check our Instagram. I'll make sure we highlight this for people before they listen to this. But it's actually where the holder, rather than the holder running straight across, at the heel and the toe, the holder cuts up. So you're right, there's more exposed blade. And Mazanek felt like, especially pushing when you're pushing off the toe, he felt it was even easier to grab an edge using that XSG holder.
Definitely. So far, again, I haven't tested the skate out myself, but our early tester, Jonathan, and Jono, most of you know him as, he really noticed that, and he actually did call it out in the review of the skate, which is up on our website as well.
Hockeyshop.com. Thehockeyshop.com is where you can see that early review. Okay, let's move over. If there's no other features right now to go through, let's move over to the custom side. Because there's two options in custom for this new skate and this new cowlingless option from CCM for goalies. There's kind of two. Walk us through the first one, and that's the 3D mold custom. 8 to 10 days delivery they're talking about right now. What does that involve? And how is it different from me buying it off the rack here and getting it heat molded on site?
Yeah, so how that differs from, again, what you mentioned there is that basically, what CCM is doing is, or what we would do first is actually scan your foot. We send that into CCM. CCM builds a 3D mold of your foot, takes a stock skate, and molds it around it. And then that gets turned around. And again, it's about that, we'll call it about a 10-day process.
And so they're actually taking, again, so you get it 3D scanned in store.
Correct.
They take all that information, that 3D scan of your foot, and they create a mold, basically an exact replica of your foot in the factory. And I think one of the key points that they stress to me is, unlike some other molds, they actually go right up over the ankle bone. And so they're creating not just your foot, but right up over that ankle bone. So any sort of uniqueness in terms of, if you've broken it, I mean, I have a guy who's broken my foot multiple times, got a few places that stick out here and there. That 3D scan is going to capture it. That mold they make is going to capture it. And then they heat mold around that all the way up to the ankles. And so heat molding there versus heat molding in store on the floor here, if I were to buy it off the rack from you, just allows them, as I understand it, almost to heat it up more. It's like a super mold. Really make sure that mold is kind of created to your foot and stays that way.
Correct. I mean, our process in store is basically what it is: 5 minutes in the oven and about 10 minutes on your feet. Whereas there, I don't know how long they heat it up for or how long they leave it on, but I mean, keep in mind this is now set on an industrial scale to a point, right? So you're getting
a lot hotter. You're not putting your foot in this one.
Exactly. So it's fully molded, fully wrapped around. So when we go and try on that skate for that first time, it should fit like a glove.
And obviously, when they heat it up that much, you don't want to be sticking your little foot. Now, the one thing I got to admit, when they explained this to me the first time over a year ago, and tell me if you went through the same thing, I'm kind of picturing this giant pile of old foot molds behind a factory after they use them. But evidently, they keep it, and they keep the molds on file because they figure once you like it, especially if you're not growing anymore, you're probably going to order more in the future.
So I think you predicted the future with your vision, because in theory, that's what their warehouse is going to look like. They're going to have a bunch of all these foot molds everywhere. Feet, exactly.
Okay, so this sounded a little creepy, and in my mind it's a little creepy, and you may have nightmares about it, people, but your feet are going to thank you, because evidently the fit, talking to Marc-Andre Fleury, who went through this for his AS1 skates last year and is still in them. Talking to Marek Mazanek, who went through this process, they both really like the way this fit. Now, that's not the 3D custom mold is not the only process. There is a full custom that you can get as well. That takes 4 weeks instead of 8 to 10 days. Gives you some more options. Can you walk us through some of those options in CCM's full custom program for this year?
Okay, so the initial process is the same scan idea, same fact that they're going to build this 3D mold of your foot.
They're going to make a fake foot.
But this is where it now differs, because now they're constructing that skate completely around that last of we'll call it a last
It's
of your
not,
foot.
they're not just molding the skate around it; they're building.
They're
it around
building, and that's correct. So now, rather than again having some areas punched out by again the mold of the foot, they can literally pre-punch that area, add more foam where you're going to need it. You get the options of changing your tongue. You get better dialing in terms of for sizing. You know, a lot of us have one size foot that's bigger than the other. This can accommodate for that.
quarter sizes.
Exactly. So we really do take it to that next level, and we want to stress that that's again for, you know, especially that have people that have unique features in their foot. This is what this is for
Yeah,
sure.
and the full custom also gives you little perks, like for example, if you want your name or your number stitched onto the tongue, little perks like that come in the full custom. 4 weeks. The other thing you can do in full custom that you can't in the 3D molded custom is you can get the AS1 boot with the XSG no cowling holder. And I think there are, you know, again, depending on how your foot scans, there might be a little bit of a different fit between the two. Your foot may be shaped better for the AS1. That may be one reason you go that way. Also, just a lot of people that had the AS1 skate really like the fit of that boot. So that'll be an option on that side. The one caveat we got from CCM, you may have people that look at that and say, I really love my AS1 boot. Why don't I just take off the cowling that I had that I bought last year and slap an XSG holder? Would not recommend it. The AS1 that they're going to build for you this year comes with a reinforced toe cap that, of course, wouldn't have been needed on last year's because it had a cowling around the front of the toe. And also just the footbed has more support in the full custom AS1 boot to allow that XSG holder to be bolted on there and firmly. So you're not, you know, what's the point of having a skate where you don't lose any energy transfer if you lose it in the bond between the skate and the holder? So if you're thinking about, hey, this is a DIY project for me, I can make my old AS1 boot onto a new XSG holder, think twice.
Yeah, that's correct. And especially, let's not forget about that toe cap being double molded specifically to go with the cowlingless design. So, you know, quite a bit different from what the stock skate is on the wall.
All right, April 26th is when we'll see this in store.
Correct.
And give a couple lower price points that we'll go over later as well. Not quite as many bells and whistles, not quite as many features, but some other options. But in the meantime, you can check out a full review of it. Jono's had it on the ice. He's been able to match what we just told you in terms of tech specs to how he feels in it on the ice, sort of match how it's supposed to feel with how it does, how the features are supposed to manifest themselves to how they do on the ice. So make sure you check it out, as I believe it's actually the first on-ice testing I've seen of the Jetspeed FT2 with that XSG holder. That's at thehockeyshop.com. And of course, April 26th, you come in store or contact them, order yours in store here in Surrey, the Hockey Shop Source for Sports. Cam Matwiv, and I got it right. Look at that, twice in the same podcast. Woo woo! Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Kevin.
I have trouble with this one because I feel like I'm overselling it. But molded, this 3D molded boot for goalies, it's life changing. I have one, not the CCM, but the True, and it feels like slippers. And it's also interesting hearing what Kay said, that he didn't go to a cowlingless skate because he still makes skate saves and didn't want to get hurt. But Hutch, have you tried this new way, whether it be True or CCM or the Bauer or whatever, this new molded?
I personally haven't had the chance. We have our order going in for a set of the new CCMs, and really excited to try them out. I was on the ice last night, and one of my feet was really hurting because the skates aren't quite there, and it's for me about the most distracting thing that can happen. And combine that with coaching in the summer where you're on the ice for 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I think this is just a game changer. There's nothing that needs to fit well more than a pair of skates. I can't wait.
And it'll blow people's minds when you go down a size or half a size, and you think, how can I do that? I've worn the same size forever, like the adult guys. And but it's so you realize how much space you're really wasting on the traditional sizing of skates.
Well, and your 2 feet are almost always slightly different size, so they can accommodate that. I've got these crazy wide feet, so they're never comfortable in anything. Everybody is unique, and yet that's one piece that we haven't really looked after very well over the years, I don't think. Although I really miss my old Lang goalie skates. Anybody ever use those? They were plastic on the outside, and they squeaked a special way as we walked down the hallway. But they had this really, really soft foam in them that probably would have caused all sorts of, force transfer issues today or something. But they did make them feel a little bit like a pair of slippers.
I imagine those things, walking to the ice, would have sounded like what the stormtroopers did walking down the hallway.
Yeah,
all the squeaks in the plastic and the foam and all that kind of junk.
Absolutely.
Henrik Lundqvist was through Vancouver recently, the New York Rangers, and their transition. And it's interesting to watch what Hank has done, because there were some questions about whether or not he would be able to survive what the New York Rangers are attempting to do. And what you're going to get out of a conversation that Woody had with Hank is that he's not only surviving, but thriving, and he's all in. Here is Henrik Lundqvist in conversation post-practice with Kevin.
What I wanted to ask you a little bit was patience, Henrik. I'm watching you in practice. I'm watching you on shots that I know 80% of the league goes down on, and your ability to sort of hold edges and hold skates on shots. Where does that come from for you? What do you think the keys are?
Key for me really when I play my game is to be patient and read the shot, and I play pretty deep, so it gives me also a little extra time to read the shot. When I'm too aggressive, I think the only option I have is to go down. But when my stands are high and I'm deep and confident, I'm more patient as well. So then, especially on the high shots, I want to be able to stand up. Usually that's a good sign for me. If I stand up on high shots, it means I'm patient enough and I'm making good reads.
How would you teach that to a kid? Like if you were, if Henrik Lundqvist changed hats to a goalie coach, how would you try and manifest that for a kid, get them to learn that type of patience?
Well, a lot of it is trusting yourself that sometimes it feels like your gap in your 5-hole is so huge that you have to always go down and close it. But I think you have enough time to do so. It comes down to trust, that you stand up and you wait for the shot, and if he happens to go low, you're going to have enough time to close it, even though you wait for that release. But a lot of times it's also reading the stick. I'm reading the shot more than waiting for it to come at me. So sometimes when they miss a shot, that's when it really fools you. So, sometimes in practice, I actually have to ask guys. I read the shot high, I stand up, they miss the shot, he goes 5-hole, and then right away, did you try to go 5-hole? Because I need to know if my read was right. And for the most part, they come clean and say they fanned on it, and that's why it went low. But for the most part, when I think, especially now over the years, I learned how to look at the stick and the release, and you get used to a certain angle on the stick, and then you know if it's going to go high or low. But of course, you do make mistakes, and it's not always the players shoot exactly where they want to shoot it as well.
We've seen deception too. These young kids are learning to show one thing and deliver another. Are you having to stay even more patient, following that puck right through the release of that stick play?
Yeah, but like you said, it's getting hard. Guys are really good, and they make you believe something, and then do something completely different. The way they release the puck today have developed so much over the last 5-6 years. You see the young kids coming into the league now, how fast they can shoot and how hard they can shoot it. And obviously the technology and the sticks have made a huge difference as well. But there's no question the skill level now in the players are really high, and it makes it pretty challenging to be a goalie, I would say.
Last one. Benoit Allaire told me I think it might have been your first season, that he knew you would be good. It's easy. It would be easy to say now, but he said this after year one, because of your ability to learn things quickly and adapt. Where does that come from you? Has that always been part of your game? And what would you say over all these years? What's the biggest one?
Well, I would say one thing. I grew up without a goalie coach, really. It was more when I turned 17, 18, 19, I started to work with a goalie coach. But before that, I was very open-minded how to play the game. I watched other goalies. I watched NHL goalies, Swedish elite goalies. And I just picked stuff that I liked. So I've always been pretty open-minded, learning new things and try to, just try new things in practice. I don't think there's one way of playing goalie. You know, there's a lot of different ways. You just need to commit to a certain style, I guess. But there's always room for learning and also change. The game changes, so you got to be open to change your game as well. So,
Is it constant for you, like still ongoing even now?
yeah, I try to adjust certain things, but I also try to stay true to my own game. You know, I know what I need to do to have or to play my best game. But like I said, the game has changed. I try to adjust to that, you know. But there's definitely certain things that the new kids in the league are doing really well that I can't do, and I just got to accept that.
Henrik only had a couple minutes for us on this trip. He had some friends he had to catch up, and he was late for a meeting, in part because he stayed out for the full hour of an optional skate at age 37 with only 8 shooters in a season in which the team has been out of the playoffs for probably more than a month, which to me, we had it on our Instagram. You saw the work ethic. Never stop battling in that practice. To me, that says a lot about why he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, why he's coming up and maybe at 450 by the time you hear this, 450 wins, only the 6th goaltender in NHL history to do that. So he was a little pressed for time. We did manage to get 5 minutes, went into the stick room for a little bit of quiet away from the scrums of the locker room, but he promised us we'd catch up on the phone and maybe do a longer interview. Now, to me, the things that stood out watching him on the ice, and that's what led to the questions about patience and about his adaptability, were just how often he made saves standing up in practice. It really was remarkable to watch, guys. The patience that this guy has is not an accident. And you heard him talk about the keys to it, but it really is a treat to watch. And not just in games. You'll see him where he doesn't default down. He'll drop one knee, sometimes just stand up on both skates. It really stands out in practice and watching the Rangers practice, just how hard he works on that patience. When you see it in a game, it is not a fluke. He puts a lot of effort into it every time he's on the ice. And then the question about adaptability was one that came from an interview I had with his goalie coach, Benoit Allaire, years ago. We had it in Goal Magazine as a feature on him way early in his career. And what Benoit said is he reminded him of Tiger Woods, Henrik did early in his career. And that's why he knew he would be great, because he was always able to adapt and change his game so quickly. And in the words of Benoit Allaire, to him, that's what truly makes the great goaltenders, their ability to adapt. So that's why I asked Henrik that. And it was interesting to hear his response in terms of, not having a goaltending coach growing up.
He's a hard worker. You're not going to say he's so passionate, he's so intense, but Woodley being able to take you inside a practice like that, and how much Hank left out there, and how much he focuses on the changes in the game is also what jumped out at me.
A common theme that keeps coming up for us is deception in shooters today, and it was interesting to hear Lundqvist talk about that and the skill that all these young guys coming into the game have, and maybe the fact that things are changing fairly quickly here in those terms, in terms of the skill that the young shooters have, might explain why some of these young guys are being so successful so quickly as they come in to face some guys that haven't grown up with that. And also interesting what a student of the game he is, that he would stop a player in the middle of practice and say, "Hey, were you intending to do that so I can learn my read?"
Yeah.
And then just Kevin talking about the amount of work that he's putting in at the end of practice. I thought, it's an optional skate, but if you're Hank's backup, there's no optional skates. I mean, if he's putting that work in, you have no choice.
I also loved the part about standing up, and we all know, like, if you're standing up, then you're reading the release. You're sort of you're in a higher level of the zone because you're able to track the release and make those saves with your hands or your upper body without going down. But the part about trusting that you can get down into your 5-hole, but sometimes it just feels so big that you have to just default to collapsing. And every person's been there, every goalie.
Of course, we had the luxury of hearing this interview a little bit earlier, so I was on the ice last night, and it's funny, I had it rolling around in my head because I would go down and a puck would sail over the net, and I thought, why am I going down on this? And all of a sudden, the next one I'm making on my feet, and so little tips like that can transition into your game really quickly.
Hank also touched on his experience with the goalie coach, or
the absence of one early in his time tending the twine. That topic spills over to this week's listener question. Back to Kevin.
This question comes from Carl Popper, who's the goaltending coach for the women's hockey team at the University of Minnesota, and actually a guy that I've met before at the Network Goaltending Symposium back in Madison. So special apologies here, Carl, if I've mispronounced your name in any way, shape, or form. That's 100% on me, but I'll be honest, I'm not that bright. We are, however, honored to get a question from a goalie coach already working at such a high level. So it's a good one, though, so let's get to it. Carl wanted to know what the importance of the goalie-coach-goalie relationship, even when it comes to stuff off the ice, and what the importance of truly knowing your players and whether it can really make a difference in their performance. He said he was most interested in hearing about Mitch Korn's influence with the Islanders, and we heard from last week, Robin Lehner. He talked about Mitch having an innate ability to know people and get the best out of them, and wondered if that was one of the reasons Islanders goaltenders are performing as well as they are this year. And, I can tell you that the unique personalities that Mitch has there, how he works with them, how he manages those personalities in terms of workload and what buttons he pushes. It is different for each guy, and knowing that is very important. I know, also that's something that one of his disciples, Steve Briere, has talked about in the past, to the point where he actually does a personality test on each of his goaltenders before he starts working on them, learns how they learn. What are their strengths? Are they visual learners? Do they need to hear things? Personality, strengths, and weaknesses, and sees how their personality actually matches his personality as a coach, so that he's cognizant of that when he goes into working with them. Unfortunately, Carl, both those guys are off limits to the media. Both guys we have good relationships and talk to on a regular basis, but in terms of on the record, Mitch on the island with Lou Lamoriello in charge, and poor Steve Briere now in Toronto, despite Lou leaving and Brendan Shanahan taking over, is totally off limits when it comes to on-the-record conversations. But we did have a chance to ask Frederik Andersen about the importance of that relationship. And it's probably not a surprise to you, Carl, but might be to other people. To him, the goalie-coach relationship is not just about the X's and O's and drills on the ice. It's almost more important that he's like a sports psychologist in terms of that back and forth and having his back and the way you build that relationship off the ice.
I think that you just nailed it. It's 99% of what goaltending and goalie coaches is really is. It's the relationship, and it's the way you work together. It's not about what drills your goalie coach gives you, and that's such a small part of it. Because especially at this level, you already made it to this level, and you're maybe trying to perfect some things, but you're not trying to change your whole way of playing and your style. And so you really just want to make sure you get work done and get into good habits. And that's obviously the goalie coach. One of his jobs is to look at the games and look at the opponents of how they maybe would come and attack you, and then you do some work to make you feel confident and ready to go for the game. But like you said, it's just as much as the mental part is just keeping your fresh and keeping the confidence high and making sure you're ready to go.
Woody, so we've got goalie coaches doing drills, a lot of repetitions, some video, and they're also a sounding board, and that may be the biggest part of it. It's fun listening to these guys take us through all these questions from the listeners.
Don't forget to keep sending us those listener questions so we can take them into the locker room and have NHL goaltenders answer them for you. We're going to get Hutch to give you the email address here because I'm an idiot and I always forget it.
Not an idiot, Kevin. That's podcast@ingoalmag.com. Podcast@ingoalmag.com. Keep sending in the questions.
And we got some big names coming into town next week, guys. Ottawa Senators are in town. Craig Anderson, Anders Nilsson, of course, I got to know while he was here with the Canucks for a year and a half. David Rittich and the Calgary Flames on the weekend. And Sergei Bobrovsky, one of my favorite, with the Columbus Blue Jackets coming in on the weekend. And then we wrap her up. Guys, we're going to have Ryan Miller in town. We're going to have a chat with him in the coming weeks. The winningest goaltender among American goaltenders in NHL history. Jonathan Quick, who's not far behind him. Ben Bishop, if he's healthy, and Martin Jones. So lots of great guests coming up on the In Goal podcast. Make sure you send your questions to us so we can take them into the locker room and get them answered by these guys. And for next week, though, guys, an interview I'm really looking forward to, and I'm sure everyone's going to get a lot out of it. It promises to be powerful. We're going to talk with Clint Malarchuk about all his efforts, both about his career on the ice, but about all his efforts in terms of helping people sort of deal with and manage mental health since he's retired in the past in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Clint coming on the show. As you know, quite often these guys, we grab them sort of, I don't want to say last minute, but it's as people pop through town, we might or might not get an opportunity. But arranging to have Clint on the show with us has been going on now for quite some time, and finally realized for this week. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I was watching when the incident happened in his career that he's so well known for, and I've watched from afar all his efforts for mental health over all these years, and it's of course becoming a really important topic for goaltenders everywhere. So I'm really excited to see what he has to say, and as you say, we've got some fantastic people coming through Vancouver this week, so going to be a great show next week, Darren.
And a similar to a conversation that I had with Theron Fleury on the Chirp podcast was we're so drawn to Clint and Theron's roles as ambassadors for mental health and awareness for that their careers themselves have become totally overshadowed. So I want to talk to Clint a little bit about his time actually playing in the National Hockey League and
Absolutely.
and what went into that and during the parts of his career in a couple of different stops. Thanks to Hutch. Have a great week, and to Woody for his contributions, and Kay Whitmore from the National Hockey League, Freddie Andersen, Henrik Lundqvist, and of course you, the listener. This is In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, source for sports, and thehockeyshop.com. Check it out now. I mean, really, go check it out now. We're done. Thehockeyshop.com. Go. Check it out. We're finished. Be good. So did you go do it? Thehockeyshop.com.